Alright, so now we're recording, so everything should be good. So what I thought I would do for this stream, it's mostly just to make sure that everything is kind of streaming as it should. We just had a problem where audio input wasn't working as it should be, so I'm glad we're doing a little test right now. And I thought I would just sort of describe what I'm going to do on this stream. So I thought it would be fun to build like an RPG in HyperCard. If you don't know what HyperCard is, it's like a weird cross between like a database and like a visual authoring environment for like early Macs. So we'll get to HyperCard in a second, but the kind of game I want to make is something like Eye the Beholder, which looks like this. So it's a first-person RPG, but where the view is sort of put together from like pre-drawn walls and floors and ceilings, with like monsters and objects overlaid on top. So that's kind of the goal. Oops. So why don't we see how far we get? Because I cut my teeth years ago programming in HyperCard when I was small. This is all going to be like very 1992s themed, I thought. So I'm going to put on some Roxette. Ask your parents. So this is also meant to be like if the music's too loud, it's playing out of another computer, so if that doesn't sound right, just let me know. Okay, so this is a Macintosh Classic emulator that I'm running. This is in fact the first computer that I did any real sort of programming on. So on the stream, I'm just going to sort of set up the HyperCard stack and draw a little bit and just make sure that everything's streaming okay. And then the meat of things will happen at some point later on when I actually advertise that the stream is happening. So a little bit about HyperCard first. It's really just sort of the metaphor for HyperCard is that it's like a virtual Rolodex. So you have these cards that sort of overlay on top of each other. So as an example of this is like sort of the home card, but if I use the arrows, I can kind of go back and forth and see like different content overlaid on the same sort of homogeneous card design. That might be a little bit much to see just at first, but maybe it'll make a little bit more sense when we actually start doing a thing. So I'm going to create a new stack. So a collection of cards in HyperCard is a stack. Gotta make sense. So I'm just going to call it Twitch RPG. Why not? And then we have so far one card with no content on it. So what I can do right now is I'm going to pull out some menus here. So this is sort of like the different modes that you can do in HyperCard. I'll get to these things on the top, the things on top in a little bit here. But most of it is just sort of like a drawing program. So I can like spray paint and whoops, and like draw shapes and type text as well. If I can type. And this is all being overlaid on like the first card in the stack. But I can also create a new card that can have its own content, like so, and I can go back and forth between the two cards in the stack. All right. Oops. So I'm just going to delete all. Windows 10 loves to steal focus from the emulator screen, so that was a little weird. Okay. So most of what I'm going to do in the stream, because it seems like everything seems to be working. Josh, let me know if anything ceases to work at this point. The thing that I'm going to be drawing is I'm going to create one card for this stream. It shouldn't take very long. What it's going to be, it's going to basically be like a wireframe view of this, of like the main sort of first-person view of the game. So what it's going to be, I should say HyperCard has layers, this notion of layers to it. So I can have like basically images and buttons and stuff that are shared between all cards. So I'm going to go into background mode. You can see that we're in background mode because we have this weird sort of hatching around the menus. And I'm just going to start drawing here. So I'm just going to draw a square like this. And I'm going to draw a little bit more, and hopefully you'll maybe see what's going on in a second here. So what I'm going to, basically what the goal here is to just draw some wireframes that correspond to like perspective in the game. So this is like the vanishing point on the horizon. That's maybe a little weird to imagine just now. Oh, shoot. This is going to be a little imprecise if I don't turn on grid mode. That way, as you can see, it sort of forces the cursor on like a certain boundary. Just because otherwise getting exact measurements is going to be a little hard. So let me just redraw this. Like so. Nice, happy vanishing point. So now what I'm going to get here is I'm going to draw a smaller square inscribed inside the larger one. Whoops. But that didn't quite line up for some reason. So it's going to look like this. So what's going to happen is anything sort of along here is going to correspond to a wall. Anything up here is going to correspond to a ceiling and floor. I'm going to draw one more sort of square here. I don't think we have to be super precise. And then, oops. I'm going to draw a few more lines here just so we can help so kind of what we have here is, it's really hard to see unless you kind of know what my plan is from the beginning. I'm just going to do a copy so I can start filling stuff in. But basically our goal here is that this is going to be the first-person view into basically, well, let's make these a little bit bigger. It's going to be a grid-based game, like so. And you can imagine each of these squares either being filled, so as to say that they have like a wall there, or it's empty, and we can pass through it and enemies can pass through it and stuff like that. Like that. So let's imagine that we're standing like right here. So if you imagine this is our player, so we're looking, in this part here, we're kind of looking down from above, and the one over here, we're looking forward. So our view is basically this here. Oh, I should say there's another, because we can now choose like shading as well. And this is actually one of my favorite things about HyperCard. I love like this one-bit sort of palette that we can have to choose. So we can imagine our view kind of being like this. Oops. No, let's not do that. Let me do that again, but better. Like that. So that means if we have a wall, let's say, I'm just going to copy everything here, just so I'm going to paste over some stuff here. But what that means is that you can have, by filling in the area, kind of what we've drawn here. If I do, say, here, 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 you can kind of see that it traces out sort of a cube, which I think would correspond to that wall there, if that makes sense. Similarly, so I've just pasted over just so we have like a fresh slate here. Similarly, this wall here that sort of extends past our field of view could be that one there. And I think in order to do this one over here, we're going to need one more sort of perspective square. So let's do that a little bit, and we'll make it a little. We'll make the distance here a little bit less than the distance here, so it kind of looks like perspective, like we're going off into the distance. I'm going to draw one more set of squares like this. Okay, so I think I like that. Oh, and I guess we need a line here as well. So you might be wondering why, because I made the distinction between the background of the card and the card itself. So basically what's going to be happening here is we're going to have... to start off, we're just going to have one kind of wall type. And in the next video, maybe I can get help from the audience about what the walls should look like if we want to have like more of a like a viney sort of thing, or if I have bricks. The design we can come up with a little bit later. But basically the idea is that the background is going to be shared. This background that we've just drawn here is going to be shared by sort of going to be shared by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cards that will each have their own square of the wall drawn. And then the way that we get a unique view, depending on where we are in the map, is just by overlaying those cards sort of in the right order. If that makes sense. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go out of background mode, and I'm going to go into... So this is the card info window. So right now we have 2 cards. The first card... Come on. Oh, that's right. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cover up card 1 of 2, because that'll be our title card, and we don't need to see the background. But what we're going to do right now is I'm going to call this card Template 1. So every card can have a unique name. And what it's going to correspond to is it's going to correspond to... I'm going to call this Cube 1, if that makes sense. So it's always the one that's 2 and 1, 2 ahead of us and 1 to the left. So it now just becomes a matter of tracing out that cube out of the template that we drew in the background. So there we have 1, and let's add something like that. And I'm just going to toggle back and forth between the background mode, the one that we just drew, and then this card, so you can kind of see how it's all filled in. So now we can do the same thing with the remaining 7 cards. So okay, so I used sort of the 50-50 one for this one here. Whoops. And the reason, whoops, let's be a little bit slower about how we do things. The mouse emulator is really finicky, so I tend to click on things that I don't mean to click on. I'm going to leave, for right now, just the background white, just so everything's filled in, but there's no sort of texture or design, and then we'll figure that out in the next stream. So that is the wall that's 2 ahead of us. I'll make another card. Oh, I should give it a name. No, I'll give them all a name at the end, not to worry. Because it's kind of annoying to watch me go back and forth between sort of this painting mode and sort of the card management functionality. There we go. Dang it. Let's do that again. There we go. And then let's fill in this one here. Now you might be wondering why I'm taking the trouble of doing it all the way over here as well. Like why are we doing the top-down view? Well, in the game, this is actually going to be our mini-map. So when we overlay cards on top of each other, not only are we rendering the final first-person view, but we will also be rendering the top-down mini-map. So you kind of get that for free, which is pretty nice. So let me do one more, or a few more here. Right there. And let me just go back to the stream here, see if anybody's talking. I've never done a stream before. This is all totally new to me. I don't think anybody's saying anything in chat. But if someone is, feel free to holler at me somehow. I don't know. I think everything looks good. Yeah, I will assume everything is working just fine. Cool. So for this one here, it's going to be 1 up and to the left, which is kind of the one that I drew before. It's funny, the only people I know who know who Roxette are... Oh, shoot, that was the wrong background. The only people I know who are... who knew who Roxette are like, not only people who grew up in the 90s, but also Swedes. So I don't know how this became an integral part of my childhood, but I definitely spent a lot of time when I was a kid making HyperCard games and listening to Roxette on the stereo. So this is a very sort of nostalgic experience. So it's cool that some of you are streaming in to experience this with me. I think Roxette is mainly known for being on the Super Mario Brothers soundtrack, like the movie with Bob Hopkins and with like the cyberpunk Goomba dystopia. Oh, nope. Let's not do that because I need the white background. Like so. Then after this, we'll just have 2 more to do because we're not going to fill in the center one because that kind of doesn't really make sense because that's where we're standing. And these ones, because they're so close to the wall, aren't going to be that hard to do. So let me do that. Dang it! Alright, I'm feeling the pressure of maybe someone watching me do this right now. So I'm clicking more than I should. So that one is filled in there. And then the last one is going to be the same, but all the way over here. Okay. Do that. There. And there. Oh, for crying out loud. I feel like if there were more people in the stream, they would all be, yelling in chat saying, "No, you're doing it wrong, you're doing it wrong. You have the wrong pattern chosen." Okay, there we go. So now we can imagine, now that we have sort of all 8 of these put together, I'm just going to kind of scroll back and forth so you can kind of see, maybe in motion, in a more visual way, how these things sort of line up. So the question is then, like, well, what happens when we're at a part of the map where there's like more than one wall in view? So what'll happen is there's a thing called the painter's algorithm, which describes how you draw things sort of in a 3D space, and it's called the painter's algorithm because first you draw things that are farthest away, like if you were a painter, and then if there's something that's closer, you paint over the thing that's in the background in the foreground. So I'm going to create a temporary new card, and let's say that we had this wall here, this wall there, and this wall in the view that we wanted to render. Well, the way we do is we basically just go back to front. Oops. Oops. Like so. Oh, there's a thing I wasn't hoping to talk about just yet. Because transparency, of course, matters. But just ignore that for the moment. So what we do is for every wall in the view that we want to render, and I think I said this one as well, right? Something like that. I'm just going to shade them in a little bit just so we can kind of see how things ought to look, right? So this one's in the foreground, and I don't know, let's imagine this is a little bit farther away, and this one's even more farther away. So that's an example of how we would draw a really simple novel view, just by taking the template cards that we had and like overlaying them on top of like the current gameplay card, if that makes sense. So that was just an example. I don't actually need this card, so I'm going to blow it away. There's one more thing I want to do. I'm just going to rename these cards. So we called this one Template 1. I'm going to call this Template 2. Template 3. This is not the most interesting part. Template 4. Template 5. Template 6. Template 7. And we could call this one 8, but I think it's useful to think of this like a dial tone, or like a touch tone phone. So this will be template 9. I may want to change that later on, but for the time being, I think I'll stick with that. So I don't think I want to get too far into what we'll actually be designing so far. This was just, as I said, mostly just wanted to get the stream up and running. But hopefully this has at least piqued your interest a little bit. Probably in a day or two, I will continue the stream. Our goals for the stream will be to write the code that actually overlays the views in a novel way, according to the map, and we'll also need to create a new card type that holds the map information. So like a grid of squares that indicates whether they're free or whether they're full, or maybe if they have items or monsters. I don't know if we'll get to that in the next one, but it'll be something like that. So I think the kids say don't forget to like and subscribe. I don't know if that's a thing that this website lets you do. But otherwise, as I said, I'm Dracula. Feel free to holler at me on the internet, and see you next time. Okay, bye.